Hey, Hockey Nuts, Wayne here. We have a third eliminated team. The Buffalo Sabres are now officially mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. So it's time to take a look at their team. They were eliminated, as I record this, it's today, March 17th, 2018. And they were eliminated with the win, New Jersey, I think it was. Yes. With New Jersey's win, Buffalo was eliminated. So Buffalo did win their game today, which kept them alive. But once New Jersey won their game against the Kings, that eliminated the Buffalo Sabres from playoff contention. So they are officially out. So it is time to take a look at the Buffalo Sabres, where they are and where they're going. Okay, let's take a look at the Buffalo Sabres. I've got their roster, just like the other past teams. I've got their roster over here on the left. And depth players and prospects over here on the right. I added this to this team here. Instead of just listing prospects, I'm adding depth players and prospects. The reason I did it is this team in particular has had a ton of injuries through the season. It's one of the reasons why they never really got off the ground. They've had Jack Eichel missed a whole bunch of games. They've had Evan Rodriguez missing a bunch of games. Matt Molson, I mean, you name it. There's a Zach Bogosian. There's just tons of injuries up and down this lineup. So with that, there were a lot of, because of the fact that they had all these injuries, there were a lot of minor league players getting called up and seeing a lot of playing time in Buffalo this season. So what we'll do from here on out, we didn't do it with Vancouver or Arizona, but with Buffalo, starting with Buffalo and all the other teams, I'm going to include some of the most used American Hockey League players as part of the depth players and prospects list. That way you get a sense, if your favorite player is, for example, Seth Griffith, who played 21 games for the Sabres. If you're a fan of his, technically he's not really a prospect per se for the Sabres. But he did play quite a bit for the team, and you were probably wondering, oh, why isn't Seth Griffith over here? Well, the reason being is he's really a depth player. He's not going to be on the roster if everybody's healthy, so he belongs over here. Okay, so that's what we're gonna. That's one change we're making going forward with all the rest of the team reports that we're going to do. And sorry, Vancouver and Arizona fans, I'm not going to go back and redo your videos because. Well, I just don't have time for it, quite frankly. All right, so that aside, looking at, of course, we got to look first because we're looking ahead here. These team reports are not dwelling on the season that's passed. You fans know exactly why your team didn't make it. In Buffalo's case, it was a slew of injuries, and the ones to Jack Eichel probably hurt them the most, but quite frankly, even if he was healthy all season, I'm not sure Buffalo would have made it to the playoffs anyway. But so we're not going to dwell too much in the past. This is a look forward type of thing. So looking forward, we have some unrestricted free agents coming out of Buffalo that are probably gone unless Buffalo, for whatever reason, decides to keep them. First and foremost, Jakob Josefsson. He's gone. Benoit Pouliot and Jordan Nolan is gone. They're both unrestricted free agents. Josh Georges and Justin Falk, and not the Justin Falk that goes to the All-Star game for the Carolina Hurricanes every year. This is the other Justin Falk. The Canadian Justin Falk. The one in Carolina is the American Justin Falk. And Chad Johnson, the backup goalie, is also a unrestricted free agent and is in jeopardy of leaving. So unless Buffalo decides to keep these players around, all 6 of these players are going to be gone. So looking at that, who are the players that are going to replace them? And I've got the ones marked in red over here as potentials to replace the 6 players on the left after they leave this year. And before we look into those players, I've also marked over here the restricted free agents that Buffalo has. Scott Wilson, Sam Reinhart, Victor Antipin, and Robin Lehner. And I know Buffalo is going to want to get all four of those guys re-signed. Right now they've got $6.12 million in cap space in order to do it. With guys like Georges leaving and Johnson leaving, who are getting paid a fairly good amount, coupled with the raising of the salary cap this year, depending on how much it's going to be. We know it's going to go up. We just don't know how much. Buffalo should have enough room to get those four restricted free agents signed. Now, because of this contract right here, this is a big, big contract. Yes, because of Connor McDavid getting what he got in Edmonton, $10 million is a lot of money for one player. $7.5 million is a lot of money for another player. They've got nearly $18 million tied up in two players. So that puts the Buffalo Sabres in kind of a bad spot. That is why their cap space is pretty low. For a team as bad as they are, they shouldn't be this close to the cap, but they are, unfortunately. And mostly due to those two players. Of course, Oposo doesn't help, and there's no telling with his injury, his concussion issues, how long he's going to be out. Pominville is signed through next year. That is a huge amount of money to put on one player. That's at best a third line, maybe a second line player. Molson's making $5 million. He's still got another year. They got some high dollar players tied up. Ristolainen, he's probably worth it. He's their best defenseman. Bogosian, again, injury-riddled season. There's some high-dollar players here that they're going to be hanging on to for a while. Scandella, he's probably worth $4 million. Georges is gone. Bolia, well, these $2 million players aren't bad. Lehner, $4 million. It's a lot of money, but probably the right amount for your starting goaltender. So, yeah, they got a lot of money tied up in these core players that Buffalo has. So, and with a couple of them being constantly injured, Oposo and Bogosian in particular, two of their captains, they need to get those guys healthy first and foremost in order to get this team back on the ice in a good state. Now, we're looking forward to prospects coming up, because you got a bunch of players leaving. They got to fill in the gaps with some young players. And the first one that jumps out at me is Casey Middlestat. He lit up the World Junior Tournament back in December or January. Buffalo needs to get him signed yesterday, because he is going to be a huge improvement over anybody they've got on that team, save for Jack Eichel. Middlestat is going to be a very, very good player for the Buffalo Sabres in the future. So they need to get him in Buffalo and get him playing. But he still has at least a year, if not two, left in college. I'm not sure exactly how much he has left in college, but I know he's not done this year. So, but look to Buffalo to try to make a case to get him signed. Alex Nylander, he's another high-end prospect that is signed, and they should be looking to get him into Buffalo next year to help out on the front. There's a couple players here that are currently playing in Sweden that are getting up there in age. Look for them to bring them in the fall to see if they can make the team. Connor Hurley, another young player that they should be getting their hands on here pretty quick. He may be done this spring. They may go ahead and sign him this spring. Their goaltender of the future is this guy right here, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. All Lehner is doing is kind of holding down the fort until Luukkonen is ready. Everybody's expecting him to be the better goalie of the two, but goalies you just never know until they come around. Brendan Gould has already played some for Buffalo this year. He's played 7 games. kind of a middle of the road prospect, but he's bound to be a good guy to have if they have to buy out some of these contracts to get some cap space. And then these other prospects are kind of lower end prospects. Some of these guys have played for the team already and will be bouncing back and forth between the minor leagues. But Fitzgerald, Laxonen, Baptiste, Ullmark, and Nelson have all spent time. Actually, Fitzgerald and Laxonen hasn't, but Baptiste, Ullmark, and Nelson have all spent time in Buffalo filling in for injuries, and they'll continue to get some time, and they may see their role expanded. And then look for them to get Fitzgerald and Laxonen over here, at least for training camp in the fall. So, bottom line with Buffalo is they've got some weighty contracts here that is going to give them problems in terms of cap space, which tells me they're probably not going to go out and sign any big name free agents this summer, because they already have a bunch of guys that are overpaid, quite frankly, in my opinion. So I think what you're going to see with the Sabres is they're going to continue the rebuild process. They've got a couple of real high-end prospects in their system. If they can get them into Buffalo, I think Buffalo will take a step forward next year. But I still don't see them having the pieces to be able to crack the playoff lineup. There's just too much. They can't go out and make a splash in free agency because they really don't have enough cap space to do it. So the best way for Buffalo to improve is to get their injured players healthy, number one. Get Middlestat and Nylander into training camp, number two. And just generally develop some of the younger players into their fold. Get them up to the NHL level. Get them up to speed and get them helping out the team. So successful teams, if you look at them, and we'll see them later on in these reports once they all get eliminated, have a good mix of players that are high-end paid players like this, mixed with a bunch of these guys that are high-end players, the 925s. That's what I call them, the 925s. These guys that are at max contract for entry-level contracts. You need a couple of these guys performing at a high level in order to, on your NHL team, in order to compete in this day and age, in this salary cap era. All the best teams have one or two of these guys on their team. Buffalo needs to do that instead of overpaying every one of their players. So, and we didn't even take a look at the draft picks for Buffalo. This year they retained their first, their second, so this one should be a good one for them to get. If they win the lottery, they can potentially get a high-end defenseman come to their team next year and get a very low salary in there. They don't have a third round, but they do have two in the fourth. And then they have their fifth, sixth, and seventh. And then in future years, they have a couple extra picks through the Sharks. Those are conditional picks, so we won't know till the end of the year where those picks ultimately lie. And the only pick that they're missing is next year in round 5 after this season. So I've already said what my bottom line is for the Sabres to get better. They've got a lot of work to do. The rebuilding process will continue next year. They'll probably take a couple steps forward. They have to. They're pretty much in the bottom of the league at this point. Can only go up from here. But this team could be a dangerous team in 3 to 4 years. So with that, again, we'll stop now with this team. We'll take a look at them again somewhere around the free agency period after the draft, somewhere in that area. And then we'll take one last look at them in the fall right before the season starts to see where we go from there. And then let me know what your thoughts are on the Sabres. Let me know what you think they should do this summer to make their team better. And with that, we'll go ahead and end it. And until the next one, we'll talk to you later.